teachers at Reddit, what was the biggest student meltdown you ever witnessed? I had a first grader that was hot. We did not have air conditioning. So he stood up, knocking over his chair. That wasn't enough, so he threw the chair, then walked to my desk and cleared it off with a swipe of his arm. After that, he pushed the intercom button calling the office, and before they could answer he stepped into the hall to sit down to wait for the principal. Once the principal arrived to take him to the air-conditioned office, the student bit the principal on the arm. We heard the hollering as we were trying to clean up. He was suspended for 3 days and got to stay home in his air-conditioned apartment. I had a first grader that was hot. You're now on a list. Taught special ed. Had a kid throw a chair through the window, break it, jump through window and run away. Man, I do not miss teaching. Was he a mute American Indian? Not me. But a teacher friend of mine was proctoring SATs when one kid flips his desk and screams "FCKU Daniel" and storms out. Turns out Daniel had been ripping his own pubes out of his junk and putting them on the kid's shoulder in front of him. When the kid in front of him found out, he obviously flipped out. And for the record, yes, Daniel is a fake name. We were meeting in the computer lab for a week because the students were working on projects. One of my students was hanging out with his girlfriend before class started. I was in the classroom, so I wasn't paying any attention to the conversation. He walks into the room and he was fuming. I asked him what was wrong and he didn't respond. He went to his computer and punched the screen. I tried to calm him down and he picked up the table, which had 5 computers on it, and tipped it over. I got the rest of the students out and called security. He absolutely destroyed the computer lab. He was suspended for the rest of the year, was banned from prom and graduation, and his parents had to pay for the damages. His girlfriend apparently cheated on him. I heard they got back together after that, but it was never confirmed. Back in my day, if a kid punched a computer screen, he would end up with a set of broken knuckles. I taught English in Korea to middle and high school students. I like to walk up and down the aisles between the desks occasionally during class just to make sure that everybody is paying attention and not using their phones. One day during a 7th grade class, I walked to the very last row and looked down. I see a nice girl, completely average in every way, using an X-Acto knife to carve up her arms. Both arms were bleeding profusely and had about 30 horizontal cuts up to her elbows. She tried to cover them up, but I walked up on her too quickly. I grabbed the assistant teacher and whispered to her what was going on without any of the other students noticing, and she took the girl to the nurse. Not an overt meltdown, but something was wrong there. I teach English in Japan and I worked in some elementary schools for a few years. In one class, this one kid just wouldn't keep quiet. Kept talking in a loud voice to the kid next to him no matter how many times I asked him to be quiet and pay attention. I got frustrated and told him off, saying that even if he didn't want to learn, he was screwing it up for everyone else and to either be quiet or get out. All in Japanese, of course. Just a note. Kids are almost never kicked out of class in Japan as far as I'm aware, because people have the right to education by law here. The kid flipped out and started yelling at me. I can't remember everything he said, but the highlight would translate as approximately "Die you King pervert," and this was coming from a 4th grader. Then he buggered off somewhere. Edit. I'm not a teacher, but I was assisting a teacher because I'm a student aide, and one of the students started arguing with the teacher and he threw his desk down hard and started calling the teacher a godless whre. I told him to calm down and he punched me in the face and then stormed out of the classroom. He was expelled due to that being his 3rd disturbance and I got a black eye. Edit. Wow, I turn off my computer and I wake up with over 1000 karma from this response. Thanks for all the funny comments. Godless whre. That's. In 8th grade, 13 years old, a military kid who had only been at our school for the year was moving again. He had severe anger issues and was seen as kind of weird. On our last field trip, he stood up, said this long-winded speech, and then proceeded to tell all the teachers and some of the kids to FCK off. It was hilarious sad. Edit. Edited to add my understanding that the situation was also very sad. Unfortunately, I was cursed with a humor that made even my grandmother's wake a funny day. And if you mix that with the fact that we were all evil middle schoolers, you get an insensitive asshole. I'm a teacher in a prison. They were doing Mavis Beacon teaches typing and one inmate kept putting his hands on the wrong keys. To which he freaks out and starts yelling at the computer how it's a dumb motherfucker. I once had a student who was using a laser pointer during class presentations that day, and after his group was finished, he was of course the normal freshman and decided to shine it around the room. Before I was able to tell him to cut it out, he managed to shine it in another student's direction. The student who had the laser pointed at him exploded. He flipped his desk screaming a string of profanities before punching my cinder block wall, shattering his hand. He then stormed out of my classroom before I was able to address the situation, get him some help for his hand. Oh my gosh. I definitely didn't interpret exploded as an emotional outburst as much as literal combustion. I teach middle school and have witnessed many meltdowns. A favorite was a new girl in my class. She threw one of my calculators across the room, so I told her to go to the office. She went out yelling, swearing, and I just stood there non-reactive. Then she went to slam the door on her way out. Or at least she tried. Can't slam a safety door. Self-closer. Couldn't help but have a laugh at that. Typical Oscar did not a teacher but. A kid in my high school told our English teacher that he was going to bring a gun to school and shoot everyone but her, so she had to live with the guilt that everyone died because of her. That was fun. Not a teacher but witnessed it. I was a sophomore. And at my high school, after lunch we had to go outside. No matter how hot or cold it was. And weren't allowed inside till the bell rang. Well, a senior that year, who was known for doing stuff he wanted when he felt like the rules were stupid. And frankly it was freezing as FCK that day. Well, just so happens the one teacher who had outside duty that day was standing by the door when he started to go in. Just to make things clear, this teacher has a lazy eye. And when she's talking to you, she's usually looking to the side of you. Well, the senior walks in and she's running up saying you can't go inside yet. He says I'm cold. And it's freezing out here. I'm going inside. She runs up and grabs his arm saying he can't go inside or he's getting detention. So he screams at the top of his lungs, I'm going inside, you FCKing sideways looking bitch. And then went inside. I think he was giving like a week of detention for that. Math teacher here. I had a second year student whip out his penis under the desk and start masturbating because he couldn't think of the last answer for the final exam. I had to send him to the dean's office and his explanation was it lets me think more clearly. Obligatory not a teacher but in 7th grade in gym class we were playing floor hockey. This one kid, Jack, was having a rough game. A different kid who played hockey tried to jump the ball over Jack but hit him in the forehead. So he freaked out and started slashing at people's ankles. The gym teachers finally started to call out his name to get him to sit out. The catch is that one of the teachers was calling him Jake instead of Jack. Cue the meltdown. He whips the hockey stick at the teachers, nearly hitting one of them, and yells my name isn't Jake and begins to cry. He finally calmed down and the gym teachers had a chance to talk to him. Pretty sure he got a detention for it. That was one of the more interesting days of that year. Serious, my name's not Rick. It was my first year teaching out of college and it wasn't the safest of schools. It was my French 1 class with almost 40 students. I had a student throw a desk in my general direction because of frustration from another student. You know shit gets real when furniture starts flying in your direction. +1 level if it has your name on it. We are sitting in a room listening to an audiobook. The room is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. A boy dropped a piece of paper on the ground and needs to pick it up. The girl next to him smacks him out of the blue on the back. He leans over and pushes her. She punches him. He dives out of his seat, picks her up at the, throws her on top of the desk and put his hands around her throat and started trying to choke her. Yeah. That was a fun day. Wasn't the teacher. Was the student. Year 7. I had been diagnosed with severe GAD, and after all year of being bullied every day I had developed depression and had a history of self-harm. One day during English class I asked to be excused to go get a drink of water. Before the teacher could say anyone, one of my main bullies said, "What, so you can go cut yourself?" I looked at the English teacher with a frown, expecting them to say something, but they just stared at me with a blank expression. I exploded. I was so angry that the school all year had done nothing to support me and stop this bullying. I ran out of the class, grabbed my bag and walked home. I ended up getting after school detention for skipping school, and the guy wasn't even spoken to. Every time I see a thread like this, I wonder if there's going to be a story about me. I was one of those problem kids that had a whole lot of incidents in school. Obligatory not a teacher warning. I can't believe I remember this. But when I was in preschool, this kid did not want to do his class walk and he started to throw a temper tantrum when the teacher told him to do it. He was screaming and crying, and he even took a black Sharpie and wrote a big fat F on his paper. He was escorted out of the classroom and did not return for the rest of the day. The kid just wanted to pay his respects. Not a teacher, but 1. Guy tried to cheat on in physics 235 on the final and got caught. Teacher took his test away. Student proceeded to argue with the teacher about it and refused to leave the room. It was awkward, at least cause the rest of us were still in the room trying to take said final. 2. Another guy has a nervous breakdown during a Calc 1 final, including slamming the paper on his desk, standing up and declaring it to be the hardest thing he's ever taken. He's ready to bolt, but the teacher calmed him down. Also went on to do the hardest question on the test, worth 20 points, on the board. Yeah. His breakdown caused me to get a better grade. When I was in 7th grade, a kid started to choke himself because he couldn't play Connect 4 on Friday because he didn't do his work. Hope you're okay, dude. So, I was the student. 10th grade. Had 2 kids constantly F-king with me and our teacher did nothing. Went on for months. Finally, they started throwing little glass containers that were stink bombs at me. Then they complained to the teacher that I smelled bad. The teacher asked me to come to her desk and then asked me to leave the room to freshen up. On my way out I just started ripping shit off her wall and cursing at her and the 2 kids. I tipped over some tables. I got about halfway there and she said she was calling security. So I walked over and ripped her phone off the wall and handed it to her. I then told her I hope she dies and walked out. I spent a lot of time in school suspension. Not a teacher, but we have this kid named Keegan who is just a complete ass. Always interrupting, being rude, stealing stuff, bothering people. The general retardee, who is actually intelligent. One day he kept interrupting in algebra during semester exam prep. And a short-tempered kid just stood up, turned to him and yelled, "Shut the FCK up and sit the FCK down. You are always F-king interrupting the class and being a complete F-king asshole to everyone in the school." He proceeded to throw a TI-84 calculator at him and sit down, and so did who he was yelling at. The teacher said thanks John and continued with the lesson. The kid didn't act up the entire rest of the year. There was a kid who had a lot of behavioral problems who, on his first day of kindergarten, threw a screaming fit in class and had to be taken to the principal's office. When the principal tried to talk to him, he grabbed the principal's tie and pulled on it, trying to choke him with it. He was sent home on his first day in the school and would continue to be a huge terror for teachers and peers all the way through 5th grade. Twist ending. That horrible kid was me. I eventually got my shit together, became a semi-stable human being, and am now a teacher. I consider every terribly behaved student I have fair karma for all the shit I put those teachers, some of whom are now my co-workers, through. You know the deal. Obligatory not X. But 8th grade science class. We sat at tables which allowed for 2 people at each, and the seats were assigned. I had this one girl who would not stop poking me and stuff. She would always poke me, touch me, yell at me if I didn't put my stuff on my side of the table, etc. One day, I just kinda flipped. I'm normally really calm, but I've had very rare moments where I just unleash strong emotions and I can't stop. She poked me in the middle of class while the teacher is teaching, and I just got up and started yelling at her. 2 minutes straight I did. The class just dead silent, while the teacher tried to yell back at me, because that'll fking help. I started crying and stimming in my chair, while my teacher yelled at me for being a crybaby and overreactive. I was sent out to the office, and the girl got no consequences. Watched a student got shot in the face by another student, point blank, before subduing said student. He did it because he declared that we had FK'd over his life and we deserved to die because of it by failing him in math, science and English. In my co-worker's defense, it's not our problem you never turned up. In short, he turned up to school with a small handgun and started shooting left and right when his girlfriend tried to calm him down. I watched as she collapsed to the ground. That was 6 months ago. I'm still seeing a therapist, but he's in jail for life. America. You ain't the only ones to have school shootings. Was TA. Passed out small, inconsequential quiz in section. Extra hour outside of class to reinforce lessons by prof. Went to bathroom. Came out. Saw student crying in fetal position under desk. Think that sucks. Told prof after weekend. Student contacted. Placed on suicide watch. That quiz. Man. A student came into school during the summer to collect their very end of school, 6th form, exam results. Turns out they missed the grades they needed to get into their first choice university, which happened to be Oxford. So they had a lot of pressure there. Absolute chaos ensues in front of everyone, including parents, other students and teachers. He tells the head teacher to shut the FCK up. Tells the assembled faculty that they were a bunch of pedophile sympathizing Catholic CNTS, while on the phone to his mother. And then squares up to another teacher before storming out. Never to be seen again at the school they had attended for 7 years. TL. DR. It was me. Last post. But I feel this needs to be seen. Not the teacher, but the student. In high school, my best friend committed suicide. We were the inseparable duo. Never fought. And one night during Bible study, his mom was the teacher. Hosted, we had our only fight. He hanged himself. My science and GT teacher sat next to me during the funeral. I am still messed up about it this day. But that semester, I went to AP Chemistry, college credit in high school, where I suffered. I would go in, put my head on the desk, and do nothing. Ever. No homework turn in. Blank tests. Nothing. I didn't care. I got a 75% across the board. That was the minimum for college credit from the class. One time another kid was acting up and didn't bring homework in. And upon receiving a 0% for it, said, "Why don't you yell at leprosy man? He never does anything." Her answer, "You shut the FCK up." We're still friends to this day. Over a decade later. She just understood. I teach the reactor lab section in my university's nuclear physics department. Boy, have I seen some meltdowns.